live. So, welcome everyone to this week's edition of our community call. So, for this week, we are going to be engaging on an open discussion regarding PNF's ecosystem thesis, which will have the BHAGs, which stands for Big Hairy Audacious Goals. There we go. In case anyone's wondering, metrics and keystone projects, as well as how we as a community can help drive these impacts towards these big, hairy, audacious goals. So, with us, we're gonna have Dermot to lead this effort and call, but everyone else will also join in on the discussions as well. And so, yeah, I think this is gonna be a really fun one to go through. So, without further ado, I will hand it off to Dermot.
Cool. Let me share my screen. Cool. And yeah, thanks everyone for joining us, taking the time to be with us, and I guess talk about the thesis we published earlier in this week, which is really talking about our thesis for Pocket as an ecosystem, and I guess the subtitle being, I guess, how we become unstoppable. Cool. Yeah. Just first of all, how we all doing? It's raining here in London. Gary Gensler is trying to shit on our parade and tear down crypto, and Pocket isn't always doing so great. So again, thank you for being here. It's not always easy, but we're a community and we're together, and that's what makes it special. And being a European, talking about a pretty idiosyncratic, esoteric subject, not like soccer and the kind of this Simpsons reference. Thesis, I couldn't help myself but to include this, but hope you're all are ready for some thesis. So yeah, to begin, I guess, why are we here? So we spent the last few weeks, Ben and I, working with a lot of you on really aligning around what our foundational beliefs are. So our purpose, our why, our mission, what we're doing, our vision, where we're going. And this is important bedrock stuff. It takes a while to really build up, to understand it, to define it. But now that we have this, we can really start to make some serious progress and start to move a hell of a lot quicker, because we can have a lot of confidence in what we really stand for and where we want to end up as well. And the purpose of our thesis was to build on this, these solid foundations, to identify, okay, what's next? If we want to scale, what should we prioritize? I'm not spending too long on all of this because we've gone through it in quite a bit of detail recently, but it's important, and it kind of helps get to us, I guess, our actual thesis, because it builds directly on this. We know our vision, our view of the promised land we want to create, this, the future where the world's most important digital infrastructure is owned and governed by its users. We know that to get there, we have our set of operating principles, or our values. And this is ultimately what makes us special and unique, and what will make us as productive as possible. We know we want to be a values-driven, open source community, and actually by being a community, being highly aligned, but ultimately we all have agency. This is opt-in. We are loosely coupled. We're inclusive in how we think about assuming everyone has positive intent. We strive to be transparent to how we default to open. We collaborate, think about ideas over egos. And we don't have to be like any centralized giant or any other organization. We're Pocket, we're different, we're special. We should be adaptable and learning constantly. And that's because faster learning beats better planning. And this really altogether is how we unlock our unlimited potential. And again, we know what we need to do. We know what we are doing. And we know that by leaning into our advantages and unlocking this RPC trilemma, we can be the most reliable, the most performant, the most cost-effective, ultimately the best goddamn RPC service there is. And so why are we doing this? So this slide, and just shared if the slides, anything else, by the way. This slide is actually just kind of giving an example of what this process has, I guess, constituted. We've looked ahead to the future based on our reason for existing, our purpose, as well as the future we want to create, our vision, to align around how we want to get there. And actually, in the case of our thesis, we've realized that we've always kind of talked about this in different ways, the importance of our community, but we didn't actually have a clear way of articulating why this is so important beyond just kind of fuzzy ideas of we're all in this together, or ideological reasons, or of course this is what makes crypto different, or open source, or anything else. It's actually that this is actually our core sustainable competitive advantage, and by leaning into decentralization via our community, Pocket can truly become a sovereign crypto network and ultimately the default infrastructure provider for the open internet. So pretty ambitious goals here, but that's why we're here. That's kind of why we're part of this community and what brought us here, and that's why we're still here today. And using this again to kind of bring this closer to the ground, and I guess closer to reality and closer to now, so we know what we need to do next. We have outlined some of these big, hairy, audacious goals, or BHAGs, and this touches upon what we view as the key priorities for the ecosystem in the kind of coming era, essentially pre-VIA1, and I think Ben will be talking about this in the coming weeks too, and these are the things that we'll ultimately talk about in this call. So V1 launch, protocol revenue, Pocket's brand, our culture and our governance, as well as, of course, driving more utility and liquidity to Pocket itself. And this is kind of a slide that kind of Ben used before that kind of brings it all together and just kind of talks about how we become a sovereign crypto network and why we should be confident in it, and linking it back to our kind of purpose and why we're here. And it's the kind of the desire and kind of the direction that we want to take to decentralize our supply, our demand, our governance, and our capital markets. And this is just that great quote from Joel Monegro from Placeholder, one of the investors in Pocket Network as well. And this was just kind of a breakthrough while drafting the thesis, because we're talking about some of these things around supply, demand, capital markets, and governance, but actually using way more words and not being quite as articulate, and actually referring back to this, which actually initially had quoted but hadn't pulled it out entirely, just became the really neat frame to build and I kind of, I guess, articulate more clearly what we're talking about and how we should be prioritizing what we need to do next. So yeah, I mean, I just thought that was pretty cool, to be honest. Cool. So what's next, and what's all of our role in this? We know we care about unstoppable open data, and at PNF, part of our mandate to steer the ecosystem to deliver as much impact as possible. As I kind of said in the post and referred back to our initial kind of roles and responsibilities doc, part of that role is to maintain a thesis on the future, what we believe our priorities and our strategic objectives are and should be, and also to direct our kind of community and our contributors towards those opportunities. So we're kind of maximizing the return on the investment of our resources, which is really our capital and our time. As a community, we can be delivering impact every day by living our values, being the best open source community we could possibly be. So holding people accountable, rewarding people when they do leave these values. And then, of course, in terms of the data, in terms of our service that we ultimately deliver to our users, not everyone is involved in this piece, but actually we can all help and we all play our part. So, of course, P&I is running this whole portal at the moment. There will hopefully be others in the soon future, which of course we'll talk about, as well as the node runners are actually running and providing that service. And the builders are building out the protocol, improving, adding tooling to kind of get us all closer to delivering the kind of the best possible RPC service. Cool, and this is just a snapshot again, taken from last week in terms of looking at those dimensions of how we've become unstoppable. It's clear that some of you think we're doing okay on governance. We could still do a lot better. We're nowhere close to a 5. We're okay on the supply side. Again, I think we all know we could be a lot better, whether it's in terms of network costs or diversity or everything else. And then there's a hell of a lot of work on the demand side as well as our capital markets. And this is a whole bunch of text, but this is our our various hairy, audacious goals that we have, or our ambitious destinies, I guess, is another way to put this. As well as, I guess, what again brings it down to earth and makes this kind of tangible. And a better way to think about this is actually kind of the North Stars for each of these. And then again, so that we know how to course correct and, avoid obstacles on the path to achieving and driving value to these metrics. We have other supporting metrics, which we didn't have space to put on the slide, but that's how we will know that we're delivering the value. So I think Ben, again, will be talking to ways in which the community can actually get involved to really deliver some of the value and drive some of these metrics in the kind of coming weeks with some of the new programs we'll be announcing and launching kind of to really align people towards these as well. And yeah, these projects, I guess you can think of these projects like our must do. These are projects that we believe are absolutely essential and will deliver immense amounts of value. And these are projects that PNF is stewarding and will be harnessing talent from the wider community. And we'll be pulling in as many people and being as transparent as possible throughout this process. But these aren't exhaustive. There are other projects that will drive value towards these metrics. And that's kind of, I think, what Ben will be talking about in ways that, in terms of the pocket open priorities, that we can be kind of looking to fund and other people to lead, or else in terms of the sockets, which you can kind of think about in terms of like mini experiments that can then spin up into bigger POPs or bigger projects. And yeah, I guess this is kind of the point of what I was talking about of we can help build on our collective work in terms of defining our DNA and aligning on our priorities, but actually we need you, we need all of you, and we ultimately need our community to get involved and to do this work. So I think as I kind of, the next few slides will kind of touch on each of these ambitious destinies, these big, hairy, audacious goals, to expand on them a little and give you a little bit more information. And by the way, this is fully open. So if you want to, I can't see the Discord questions here, but if you have a question, just kind of take yourself off mute and feel free to jump in. But we will be, after each one, we'll also be asking you if you have any other ideas of how you could be delivering value, or how ideas that you'd love to see other people delivering value or kind of experimenting on. Just get them out there. I think this is kind of meant to be an open forum, and it's kind of meant to be a bit of fun as well. And if just anything's unclear at all, just kind of say it as well. So yeah, this one's pretty self-explanatory. I think this is pretty close. Probably the goal that I guess everyone in the community is most aware of and most excited about. There's already a bunch of community initiatives that we're focused on that are active. So people are kind of taking forward on testnet. There's obviously various kind of community contributors supporting the protocol already. And in terms of the projects themselves, there's the V1 launch, and there's going to be the economics and governance R&D that kind of PNF are helping to steward. And ultimately, the North Star we're driving towards is to deliver a permissionless and scalable protocol, because that will enable all of the great work that we're all collectively doing to be uncapped, essentially. And so we can truly have unlimited potential. So yeah, I guess this is kind of just quickly opening it up to the floor. And I guess it's kind of, you can ask questions around if you have anything to kind of immediately say on this, or if you have any kind of ideas that come to mind or anything fun you want to mention in terms of how you think you or anyone else in the community is working to drive value towards V1.
And give thanks to the source that create life. To see a sunset, or see a sunlight. Let's see what's on dawn. With these same eyes, the truth on swag.
Was that a question or was?
Yeah, was that a question?
I think he or she was muted or accidentally unmuted.
Okay.
Cool. Anyone else have anything to add or mention? If not, I can go on, and I think there will be more as we get into it. So yeah, our second BHAG or ambitious destiny is this is pretty audacious, no doubt. We want Pocket to have $1 billion of annual protocol revenue, and actually Jack has been doing a lot of kind of work on this to actually even define what this means, because I think some people might just think, okay, is that just burning some app stakes? But like, what does that really mean? And actually, I think I'll ask Jack to kind of talk about this in a second, but actually it's a lot more than that. So this is ultimately our North Star for the wider ecosystem as well, because it's so multifaceted. Obviously, this does directly touch upon demand, but really to get to the place where we're anywhere close to $1 billion of annual protocol revenue, we need to have a super successful, productive supply side. Our governance needs to be on point. Our marketing needs to be on point. Everything needs to be working. So I think this is why we have this as such an ambitious goal, because we need to get everything right to really kind of get close to that number. And in terms of the immediate projects that we're working on to drive value towards this metric, it's opening up the gateway in terms of how kind of Pocket is ultimately sold to the demand side, to more operators than just P&I. P&I is doing a better and better job at selling Pocket primarily to bigger institutional kind of enterprise players. And that's brilliant, but P&I ultimately doesn't have the time of day, even the kind of the language capabilities to target every single startup developer community in the world. So having more gateway operators targeting different niche teams, different kind of marketing strategies, different customizations and features at the gateway level, all of this just maximizes Pocket's success, and it all brings value back to Pocket. So I think this is just an absolute win-win. And I think if you think about Pocket's kind of, again, sustainable competitive advantages at scale, you can think of some of the shared infrastructure or just shared costs we can all leverage from all these gateway operators. So gateway operators may be brilliant at the technology, may be brilliant at sales, may have access to a really brilliant community, but actually maybe they're not great at marketing. Maybe they're not great at something else. So actually that's kind of where we can think about where we as a community can share some of these insights, just some of this kind of prior work. And that's kind of the difference from being a community to being a kind of a gated private company. And as part of this as well, we mentioned revenue, but again, what does that mean? We currently have P&I's is diverting a decent portion of its revenue it's getting from its sales and its work into buying up Pocket, but that isn't yet translating directly into the protocol in terms of burning. So I think, Jack, if you want to quickly kind of speak to kind of some of the points on this, because I know you're doing a lot of work on it.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I'll start by kind of detailing a bit more what we mean by decentralizing the gateway, and then I'll evolve into talking about revenue. So yeah, we've been, for the last month or so, we've been preparing an ecosystem-wide effort to truly decentralize the gateway prior to launching B1. What we mean by that is actually decentralizing the gateway at the app stake or protocol level, rather than just routing all relays through the Portal API backend. And there is a reason for that I'll get into. But essentially, we realized that with the foundation becoming a more independent, credibly neutral facilitator of the ecosystem, that this actually unlocked more possibilities for coordinating large ecosystem-wide efforts, keeping people accountable, and so on, using off-chain mechanisms, which actually unlocks the possibility of decentralizing the gateway to a degree. And let's just to be clear, we're not talking about making the gateway permissionless. We're talking about opening up the gateway role to more than just P&I. So why would we be interested in doing this? Ultimately, it comes down to a thesis that if you look at the dynamics that have played out on the supply side, the co-opetition that has taken place, just for those who might not be familiar with the word, co-opetition basically means a hybrid of competition and collaboration that typically takes place within ecosystems. Because the competitors all share the same ecosystem, the same platform, there's a rising tide lifts all boats dynamic where they might compete with each other on optimizations, but ultimately, if there's opportunities to share knowledge, that can happen. So we can see that that's happened with the supply side with the development and launch of Lean Pocket and GeoMesh, all the knowledge sharing that takes place within Discord. And ultimately, we benefit from a sort of collective intelligence of the node runner, of the supply side, more so than we would have if we were just, if Pocket was like a Alchemy or Infura centralized company with a sort of limited DevOps team. So we want to see this co-opetition dynamic take place on the demand side.
Hello?
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 Is there a question? No? Okay, I'll continue. So we think that gateways can ultimately differentiate from each other and complement each other on multiple factors, whether it's quality of service through building a different cherry-picking logic, whether it's cost by building cheaper and cheaper gateway backends, whether it's strategy. One gateway might pursue a wholesale enterprise strategy like P&I is pursuing. Another gateway might decide that they want to go for the long tail and go for a sort of DevRel focused indie developer hackathon type approach, relying on maybe YouTube content and so on to drive the long tail of adoption. We can see gateways differentiating from each other in terms of the customer support that they provide, marketing and sales, branding, and so on. We can see gateways improving, going for different distributions of their server locations and tweaking latency for themselves, which could further optimize the latency metrics of the service. And we ultimately think that the services that each gateway is providing can be specialized in terms of the chains that they have expertise of. They can do more effective cherry picking on specific chains, or whether it's the regions that they're based in. We can, for example, envision an APAC specific gateway that is able to actually provide customer service to Chinese developers, Korean developers, what have you. And also value add services, like we see in competitors like Alchemy, who have built an ecosystem of tools and SDKs that they sell on top of their gateway. We can see other gateway operators doing this. So we think that there's a lot of opportunities for competition between gateways that will ultimately drive the quality of the overall service that Pocket provides to developers. It's worked incredibly well on the supply side, this co-opetition dynamic, for improving the quality of the supply side. We want to see the same thing happen to the demand side. So, and ultimately in the long run, why would we do this before V1? To get this co-opetition dynamic going ASAP, but also so that we can start to bootstrap what it means to be a multi-gateway ecosystem prior to launching V1, so that when V1 does launch and the gateways are permissionless, we actually have a better idea of how what it means to have a multi-gateway ecosystem, and we're able to hit the ground running when V1 launches. So next steps on this vision for decentralizing gateways are to there's a forum post coming soon. We've had a couple of sessions with different stakeholders in the ecosystem discussing what does this mean, how can this work, whether it's across all dimensions of governance, technology, and so on. We're putting this together into a project plan essentially, and for how we're going to implement this, and then we'll be publishing this to the forum soon to get the rest of the community involved in discussing it. We would aim to be in a multi-gateway ecosystem by Q3. That's our ambitious target for that. the next part of driving more protocol revenue pre-V1 is once we've decentralized the gateways or in tandem with decentralizing the gateways to actually start generating, accelerating the progress towards having protocol revenue. We've identified protocol revenue as a North Star in our DNA content and in the strategic thesis that we just published. And so we need to align as a community on what we mean by protocol revenue and our roadmap to generating protocol revenue. So I've been working on a post that is going out to the forum soon, by next week, which looks to define protocol revenue more specifically and also to outline a plan for us to start moving towards having more protocol revenue. So I'll give a bit of a sneak peek now, and then there'll be more detail in the forum post. But basically, if we take the definition that Token Terminal uses for protocol revenue, revenue for the protocol is what's left of demand side fees after accounting for supply side fees. So a good analogy here is two-sided markets in the Web 2 world like Airbnb and Uber. They have Airbnb has hosts who Airbnb pays, and they have guests who pay Airbnb. The hosts are considered the supply side, and they have their own fees which are being paid, and the guests are paying in demand side fees. If the demand side collection of fees is exactly equal to what's being paid out to hosts, then Airbnb technically has zero revenue as a company, as the platform. So that's how it applies to protocols. If you are not earning more demand side fees than you are paying out to the supply side, the protocol has zero protocol revenue, if not negative. So that's going to be really helpful for us to align on, because we're going to be able to take a more holistic view of Pocket's economy. We actually, similarly to activating decentralized gateways prior to V1, using the foundation as a coordinator off-chain, we believe that we can actually activate demand-side fees prior to V1 as well, using an off-chain burn mechanism that we would facilitate. We would begin charging gateway operators a fee for the relays that they're sending through the network. So they would be collecting revenue from their users, and then they would be paying a portion of that directly to the protocol, and that would begin being burned. So we can actually start to generate demand-side fees and accelerate our progress towards being a protocol revenue positive ecosystem. It should be noted that getting to being revenue positive requires a holistic approach because it involves both the demand side and the supply side. We need to be scaling demand side fees, but we also need to be reducing supply side fees, aka inflation. And when we will get to being revenue positive when we are collecting more demand side fees than we are paying out to the supply side. It should also be noted that just because we would have protocol revenue as a North Star doesn't mean we want to turn it on overnight. We can technically become revenue positive when if we were to slash supply side fees to almost zero and start generating demand side burn. But we're also completely cutting out our potential to scale the demand. So there is an element of bootstrapping the supply side so that we have the capacity to scale those demand side fees, and we're increasing our potential as a two-sided market. That's what we've been doing to date. What this is all about really is pushing us, accelerating the next phase, and getting us to that equality on both sides of the market. So I'm really excited about both of these initiatives. I think it's going to be really healthy for the ecosystem, and the hope is that it will align more of the community around a more holistic approach to governing the protocol. So far, the DAO has really been focused on tweaking the supply side levers, because that's all the DAO has had the ability to tweak, given that we had just one gateway and no demand side fees. But essentially, we're looking to decentralize the gateway and activate the demand side, and ultimately give the DAO the levers on the demand side to really push us to the next era for Pocket's ecosystem. So, yeah, I've rambled a bit there, but I hope that's all positive. And yeah, I'll let Dermot take it over from here.
Yeah, no, thank you, Jack. That's great, and this is super important stuff. And yeah, I'm really excited to see this kind of kicking off and ultimately getting out into the wild. And you'll be seeing that there's a lot of notable community members involved in that effort too. Does anyone want to chip in with any other ideas or initiatives in terms of how they'd like to get involved in some of the stated priorities, or any other priorities they'd like to see PNF looking to fund via their own budget or the DAO, or, as I said, just kind of whether they or they'd like to see someone else start an experiment in this area? Does anyone else want to open up a topic, or even ask any questions to me or Jack on what's been said so far?
I'd like to jump in if that's all right.
Yeah, please do.
So I saw recently a post on the forum about marketing, like an initiative to do some actual marketing for Pocket. And it's nice that we're increasing, or we're aiming to increase the sales, the biz dev side of things. But to truly become the default, that's something that we keep saying we want to be. We need to be a name that people recognize who aren't, say, the potential customers yet. And I feel like if we could fund some sort of marketing initiative, and I'm not trying to cause up a fuss, but I don't mean just like community members tweeting. I mean like an actual, I wouldn't say maybe a firm, but some actual people who have marketing experience that can get the word out there to people that are not just the people following them or in the same circle, but to people outside of the current third level contacts or of the Pocket ecosystem, and truly reach those new people. I feel like that would be something really worth funding if we're truly trying to get to a 1 billion revenue for the protocol per year. I think that's something that we really need to be pushing. It's not just sales, but also the marketing side of things. They are very different in the grand scheme of things.
No, I love this, and this is 100% right. And actually, the reason, and I think it's almost like I planted you in the audience, but I couldn't have put a better plant if I wanted. That was it's perfect in terms of our next kind of audacious goal, because as we were aligning on kind of what we care about and realizing kind of the priorities we care about in terms of, we talked about V1, we talked about decentralizing the gateway, and we're trying to formalize and structure these. We then realized that, as you said, marketing is just a gaping hole.
Hey, Dermot.
Yeah.
Before you go in to this next part, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the gateway side of things, if that's all right.
Well, yeah, well, sure. I won't dive in too deep, but to quickly respond to kind of H5 Log, I mean, absolutely, and we will. Yeah, I'll go into it more in terms of what we're doing, but yeah, we're hiring a firm and we're hiring a head of marketing, and we'll be making some serious investments from bottoms up as well as some top down initiatives. But yeah, Mike, please jump in on the gateway.
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight how excited I am about this specific initiative. We won't get to 1 billion protocol revenue alone. And when we talk about the different, I think Jack, you did a good job talking about the different opportunities with gateways. You know, we at P&I have our own product roadmap, right? We're, incentivized to add these blockchains today. We may add a storage protocol later or two, and these sorts of things, or whatever direction we decide to go in. And if there's one thing I've learned over the last year, as we've started to really kind of change the company into more of a business, is that the needs of Web3 developers are effectively infinite across the board. And for me, that is the largest opportunity for all of us here who want to operate their own gateway, right? Whether that's the probably thousands, hundreds of thousands of different permutations on an indexing side of things, or pushing forward integrations on storage or privacy or you name it, right? That just massively and collectively improves our ability to be able to get to that 1 billion protocol revenue number, which gets me really, really excited. So I just wanted to highlight a little bit more of the opportunity there, because there's only so much that we are or will do. We have a very opinionated way in which we are deciding to drive this forward, which means that there's a ton of room for people to get creative and find different ways to sell or to build their stack or anything, to be honest. So I just wanted to add there that it's just really exciting and I think it's an inspiring goal for all of us to get to.
Nice. And I guess, thank you, Matt. I think that's amazing context. And I don't expect anyone, really, it seems probably bar Ramiro, to really dive into the 26 pages of supporting documentation that backs up why we want to decentralize on each of these dimensions, and ultimately how we came to these ambitious destinies. But in this case, in terms of the kind of the size of the market opportunity that Mike was talking about, it is absolutely ginormous. Even speaking of our actual market, of the RPC market, and obviously there's adjacent markets that Pocket can tackle with this in kind of sort of infrastructure, and this kind of incentivizing kind of the entities that we do incentivize within our system. There's roughly up to 2 trillion relays per day. And kind of, I can go into this analysis in the document, but using kind of a Pareto principle, there's probably 200 to 400 billion paid relays per day up for grabs. And yes, the current version of the protocol can do somewhere between 3 to 10 billion. I think there's kind of upcoming update to the protocol to make sure we can capture roughly 10 billion of that. But actually, as we're kind of the paid number of relays going through the protocol is still only kind of a few hundred million at most. That may start to kind of grow dramatically. There's just such a big market there, and just having more people tackling this and all driving demands of the protocol, we all win. And that's why the protocol model is just so much more exciting than your traditional company. And that's I think why I do firmly believe that the RPC trilemma and how we do what we're doing by leveraging decentralization is how we win. And that's just what's super exciting. Unless anyone else wants to jump in, I'll kind of move on to marketing, because I think it's important. And it's something I think it's fair to say, and I don't know if you want to opine on this or not, Mike, it's just hasn't been given the love or attention. I don't think deliberately at all. It's really hard to get right. It's really hard to get the right people. You sometimes need a bit of luck with marketing as well. And also it's timing, it's resources, particularly when you're kind of resource short is often the last thing that you kind of work on. And actually we realize we have an opportunity now to kind of go to your point, H5 Law, to build up trust, legitimacy, and actually excitement from the bottoms up with the key people across the whole Web3 space and then beyond, in terms of just understanding the core innovations happening in our protocol, in our DAO. And this should have manifest benefits for across the whole ecosystem in terms of how the protocol team can hire, in terms of why validators for other networks should join our supply side to harden it, and ultimately to come with needing actually such marginal extra revenue to be profitable, because they're already running the infrastructure, in terms of joining our DAO because they're excited. They're a builder. They want to be part of this exciting, awesome project. They care about the mission. It all just adds up, or just it feeds through that, hey, Pocket's amazing. It's reliable. It's performant. It's super cheap. All of those things build up. And yeah, we're kind of hiring a head of marketing to manage some of these relationships, to work with the community to harness their talents, from content to just crafting unique strategies for relationships they may have, or kind of knowledge they may have, and to work on PR to open some of these doors and make sure we're getting through to the right networks. And absolutely we need to crack it through and way beyond our kind of current reach. It needs to be a lot larger, but I think we're kind of building up the foundations just like we did with DNA, to build up those foundations first, so then we can start to move a lot quicker. And so I think there's nothing here for the or the community to kind of do immediately. This is something we're leading and we're stewarding, and we'll kind of be updating everyone as it proceeds. But it's kind of like basically kind of just a placeholder, say, hey, watch this space. We'll be in touch soon to kind of bring you in once it becomes more actionable.
Just a couple of things to add there as well, just to illustrate some of the examples of the foundation taking some more ownership of marketing related responsibilities, which ultimately means that we can make those opportunities available to the community. We are taking ownership of the official Pocket.network website, and we're expecting to go live with an update tomorrow on the website. I've been working with Jinx and Ritesh from DGen Design on an update to the website. It's going to be pretty basic for now because we didn't have much time, but it will be a refresh, a new landing page. We're going to emphasize the ecosystem a bit more with some mentions of node runners and whatnot. And ultimately, we'll continue over the coming months and years to update the website and make it really reflect the ecosystem as a whole. We also now have custody of the official Twitter account, which in other words means the DAO has custody of the official Twitter account. And I don't know if people will have noticed, but we've had Pocket News actually running a lot of the official Twitter account for the last couple of weeks. So that's quite exciting as well. And so, yeah, combining that new channel ownership that we have as the foundation on behalf of the DAO, and hiring as well a head of marketing and a PR firm, we're really excited about unlocking the capabilities that we have to really drive, amplify what Pocket is doing more and more.
Nice. Yeah, thank you, Jack. Yeah, that is great stuff. And yeah, in terms of this goal, I think we're doing a pretty good job. It's undoubtedly true that it's clear that we aren't always the most aligned. I think we've had disagreements around impact, around focus, whether we pay each other too much, all of this kind of stuff. But actually, we have a fraction of the problems of other DAOs. We're in a much better place. We have a much better understanding of our overall mission. We have less coordination costs. We are way less plutocratic. In fact, we're almost perfectly equal in terms of our voting structure. We have such better starting point from which to kind of proceed and progress from here. And really, this is just about leaning into our advantage that we already have. We want to remain representative across all of our stakeholder groups. We want to harden the protocol in terms of our validators to make sure that it's not that easy for the protocol to halt because of validators going down or colluding or bad actors to control it. And similarly with the DAO, we want to. There will be special interests that form over time. We want to be monitoring all of this, and of course, the community NPS in terms of our culture is thinking about your likelihood that you want to stay. You'd promote Pocket as a good project to work in, and yeah, ultimately that you're proud to be here. These are kind of like, I guess, kind of leading metrics that would tell that we do have a good, healthy culture and we're productive as we like. But in terms of the initiatives that we're working on, DNA, you're all aware of. Grow is what Ben's been working on, and Creds will just reduce the coordination costs in terms of actually claiming that DAO vote, which is great because I think we do want to expand our voting base. And we also then want to maybe experiment with how we boost the reputation of certain members of our voters for their participation, their skills, different things they're doing. So that's all exciting stuff that Creds will unlock. But Ben, do you want to talk about some of the things that we're looking to be doing to make the strategic thesis and some of the projects and metrics a little bit more actionable and kind of give something more meaty for the kind of community to bite into?
Yeah, I think what I want to call out is two parts of Grow. Just to back over it a little bit, Grow has been sort of an experimental program that PNF have been incubating around new funding mechanisms for contributions. We feel quite confident now, particularly with the thesis coming into the open, that these are mechanisms that people can use to contribute in really meaningful ways to these strategic priority projects. So the two that I want to talk about is sockets and POPs. Sockets are essentially small seed funds to experiment in pursuit of one of our key metrics. They'll be very, very lightly permissioned, which means that if you make a commitment to impact one of our key metrics or North Star metrics, essentially there's a small amount of funding there for you to go off and run that experiment. Rather than everything being permissioned through the DAO, this will give us the ability to let people experiment, let all of us find out what it is that specifically drives impact, who is really up for the fight to drive that impact, and who perhaps is looking for a bit of a payday. And therefore we can actually make a lot of progress quickly, learning together through what's working and I guess what's not working. So I think that's a really exciting mechanism for everyone to feel like, hey, if I think about these priorities, if I think about these metrics and I feel like I can make a difference, I don't need to ask permission. I can just get on and start working on that, knowing that there's going to be some support there for me. The other really important mechanism is something we're calling POPs, which is basically a pocket open priority. They will be like RFPs, where essentially what we'll be looking for is for people to put forward their capability to potentially take on larger pieces of work which support these strategic priorities. If we think about something like Wrapped Pocket as an example, or perhaps gateways as an example, you know, a POP would be something that would be open, and then people could apply to run a gateway, and through that process, essentially can start making funded contributions to Pocket Network as well. So there's a lot in there. Probably gone a little bit too quick on some of that, but yeah, we're really building up new mechanisms so that not everything is permissioned through the DAO. For people that want to contribute, there's different ways to do that, and that all of this can be funneling back up into our strategic priorities. So it's not just PNF, not just the community, but potentially even new people outside of our ecosystem coming in and being able to make an impact.
Awesome. Thank you, Ben. I will quickly pause here if anyone wants to speak up, but I know we have another slide to go and we're taking quite a while, so I'll jump forward otherwise. Cool. And we're on to the last of the 5 of our big, hairy, audacious goals. And this is, you know, something people have been long crying out for, and ultimately it's multifaceted to ultimately drive value to the token, but actually really we're talking about driving kind of putting in place the infrastructure to enable Pocket to become that blue chip token. And there's everything from market makers, there's custodians, there's all of these elements, and even kind of listings. I think as part of our analysis, we came up with the North Star for this goal in terms of 2% depth. And that means how much you can buy or sell, 2% either side of the spot price. And I think in the last kind of couple of weeks, this has been around like $15,000 to $20,000. It's like minuscule. Major barrier to entry for new people moving in and out. It's a massive friction point for our node runners. And for Pocket's economy to win, ultimately the lifeblood of the economy, Pocket needs to be as freely accessible as possible. And yeah, this volatility in market depth is a real barrier. And secondly, looking at the potential for Pocket and what we're doing in the DAO and where we want to get to, there's no smart contracts on Pocket. Having access to the EVM DAO infrastructure is just going to really let us to move forward a lot quicker in terms of streaming payments, a whole bunch of programmatic things we can do. We played around with Joke DAO's contests. We may or may not use that again, but an example with that, we could have had an automatic payout for whoever wins that at the end of it, just like basic stuff instead of Jack kind of batching up payments and spending hours at the end of a week to do all these payments. And these are only going to kind of keep on growing. We can use Wrap Pocket and we can have this programmatic, and different people with different permissions can, you know, veto stuff. We can have a much smoother, more on-chain DAO, which is just really exciting. So so Wrap Pocket is the key project we're working on in this regard. And we will be publishing plans on that to the forum in the next few weeks, and that will be kind of have a clear path forward in terms of the spec. We'll want people to contribute to that. We'll ultimately have some people we know we want to work on it, but if people do want to work on this as it's released, please do put up your hand up and we'll do our best to get you involved. This is kind of a really key project for us, and we actually think we can get this up and running and launched, I think, hopefully early next quarter is the aim. Cool. Right, that's it. You've spent the guts of an hour on a Thursday listening to our strategic ecosystem thesis. So thank you for your time. It's really appreciated. You guys have been great. So I'll leave it here. Does anyone have any questions of any kind? While all of this, for me, for Ben, for Jack, or just to anyone else on the call?
Hello, hi. I have a question. First of all, in fact, I have a recommendation. Maybe you will change the hour of all these meetings. It's quite hard for members of the community from Europe or Asia to join these calls at these hours.
I fully agree. I've been trying to push it back earlier as well, and maybe on a Wednesday, but that's a really good point. Out of interest, would a different day help you as well?
Well, it's not a matter of day. In fact, it's a matter of hour.
Yeah.
Besides that, maybe I missed something. I think that I was delayed with 10 minutes or so. I don't know if you spoke about QoS and if you have any mechanisms in the new portal. This is quite a big discussion in Discord channels, and not only in Discord channels. There are a lot of issues that, well, exist in the current versions, and I don't know if they will persist in the new version.
Yeah, so we talked about much higher level in terms of these are our strategic objectives for the ecosystem going forward, and as part of that, it's about V1 being as successful as possible. But actually, in terms of our general service, of course, QoS is super important, and that's kind of one of the key pillars of, I guess, being performant. We didn't touch upon that. My understanding is prior to V1, the portal, the P&I team is working on QoS improvements as part of their gateway. So I don't know if anyone from the P&I team wants to speak up in terms of what they're working on.
Yeah, I can jump in as well. Just I know that Fred recently announced Portal V2, which I believe is upgrading the QoS of P&I's portal. What we did talk about that was relevant to QoS is our project to decentralize the gateways, decentralize the gateway role prior to V1, which will create more gateway operators that will also lead to more improvements in QoS through competition, knowledge sharing, etc. So that's not a direct project to improve QoS, but we expect it will create the environment that will lead to bigger improvements over time. And if anyone on P&I who worked on Portal V2 is here, maybe they can jump in with comments on that.
Yeah, so I just want to say that, yes, QoS is a high priority for us in Portal V2. At launch, we will be feature parity with Portal V1 just to ensure that the migration runs smoothly and stable. And then shortly thereafter, we will make improvements to our QoS module and be publishing more information about supported methods and sort of what we're expecting in order to support our users. I will say that in a multi-gateway world, we have to be cognizant that QoS is going to vary by gateway and their opinions on a gateway, and the service they offer their customers. And so it's something we would certainly coordinate and work together on, but ultimately it would be up to them unless there becomes uniform standard across all providers, which I'm not sure that there would be.
All right. Is there any
Yeah,
other?
so we will be open
Okay.
sourcing parts of the quality of service module, as we're calling it. And so you'll be able to see the code, and we do hope to publish more blog articles and further information on how everything works once we get through the migration.
Thanks, Gabby. I just want to add there is going to be more information specifically about our quality of service goals in Q2 going out in our Q1 update that should be posted on the forum, in the upcoming weeks. So you'll see more specifics about what parts of quality of service we're tackling then. But that domain area is really Fred's area of expertise. And if you join us on the Node Runners calls on Wednesday next week, we can definitely answer some questions more specifically about that there.
Awesome.
Thanks, Andre. I got to jump, guys, but thank you so much. Great call. See you all soon.
Yeah, I realize we're out of time. Thank you, everyone. This has been you want to close us out?
Yeah. So
If anyone has any questions or thoughts after it, please do feel free to DM myself, Jack, Ben, or anyone else on the foundation team as well.
yep. Feel free to let us know if there's any questions after this. But yeah, thank you everyone for joining this call, and I'll have this. This is being recorded, so I'll have this published hopefully soon after it's edited a bit, and then yeah, see you guys next time. And thanks again for joining the call. Take care.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.